Well, the Senate Democrats just blocked the Corona stimulus package, $1 trillion bill. And of course, this is being politicized. But me and Tim Pashot will talk about the larger ramifications of this, especially regarding an economic impact. Now, a lot of people vying for power, trying to use this crisis to benefit themselves. I mean, what else is new? That's modern politics here. But let me give you the little details here. This new bill took 3 days of negotiations to push forward. The Senate Democrats blocked it, and now, just moments ago, they blocked a vote that was supposed to happen early Monday morning, this morning, and they're not allowing it to go through because of many different provisions. And they're able to do this even though they don't have the majority because other Republicans, senators, well, they're sick or they're quarantining themselves. So very, very strange situation. And according to Mitch McConnell, who of course is in the Senate, he's saying the Democrats are pissed off because they can't get their wish list done of, quote, this is what the Democrats want. This is why they're not allowing this kind of stimulus UBI bill to pass through because, one, they're citing tax deductions to solar and wind energy companies, workplace provisions sought by organized labor, and new emission standards for the airlines. That's according to Mitch McConnell to why the Democrats are blocking this coronavirus stimulus bill. What do you think, Tim, about this UBI stimulus bill that the Democrats don't want, that Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, is begging everyone to pass through right now? What's your make of it?
Well, I guess first it's probably a good idea to probably get into actually what is in the bill. I think that's going to be important. So if we go over here and take a look at what's actually in the bill, and the Democrats block the Senate coronavirus bill, calling it a corporate bailout. So the main things right now that are in the bill, actually, let's first go to this article, what the Family First Coronavirus Relief Bill means for small business owners and self-employed people. And so
I like the name of it, Family First, but then there's also other corporate bailouts in there as well, right?
Yeah, it's family first, but 90% of it's for the corporations. But the main highlights here is the April 15th tax return filing deadline was deferred 3 months. So now we've got July 15th is the new extended date. We also have the new law requires small employers, so that's those with fewer than 500 employees, to provide limited paid leave benefits to employees who are affected by the coronavirus emergency. And small employers are given new tax credits and federal payroll tax relief to pay for the mandatory benefits. The act also requires emergency paid sick leave. And then it's just like, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? It is limited to $511 per day for up to 10 days, up to $5,110 in total for all eligible employee in coronavirus quarantines or seeking a coronavirus diagnosis. And employee, so you can just say, oh, hey, I think I might have coronavirus, or let's just go proactively test, and then you're out of work for 10 days, and then the employer has to pay for it. Who knows? So an employee can also receive emergency paid sick leave up to $200 per day for up to 10 days, $2,000 in total, to care for a quarantined family member or child whose school or child care location has been closed due to the pandemic. The act also requires that small business employees be given the right to take up to 12 weeks of job-protected family leave if the employee or a family member is in a coronavirus quarantine, or if the school or child location of the employee's child is closed due to the coronavirus. The employer must pay at least 2/3 of the employee's usual pay, up to a maximum of $200 a day, and overall employee maximum of $10,000 in paid leave payments. Now, there's also some small employer tax credits involved in this as well. And specifically, a small employer can collect tax credits equal to 100% of the qualified emergency sick leave and family leave payments made by the employer pursuant to the act. And and this does start, the beginning date of this will be in 15 days of the March 18th date for this act to become law. So I guess if you happen to be affected by this, let's say in February or in January, because the Chinese were lying about this, then I guess you are SOL, and sucks to be you, unfortunately. And yeah, so then going along here, we also have small employers get some FICA tax relief, and the the sick leave and family leave payments mandated by the act are exempt from the 6.2% Social Security tax. So for every $100,000, you're saving $6,200 there, but you still have to pay the 1.45% Medicare tax. And one thing I want to point out that a lot of people aren't aware of, that Medicare is actually a much bigger unfunded liability and a much bigger problem for this country than Social Security. So I guess you just solve the problem by making it Medicare for all and making it an even bigger problem. But we do have, pretty comparable credits are going to be available to self-employed individuals as well. So for them, the credit is equal to 100% of the self-employed person's sick leave, equivalent to 67% of the sick leave equivalent for taking care of family members. And then the other thing we've got going, so if we skip through and actually go through and talk about, some of the corporate bailouts that are going on in the bill, and this is the reason why the Democrats are blocking this. But going on to this article from Huffington Post, which, again, I'm not, a huge Huffington Post fan, but the Democrats are raising serious concerns about the Senate's massive emergency legislation aimed at propping up the economy and giving relief to workers hit hard by the coronavirus. Mitch McConnell attempted to advance the bill on Sunday evening and emphasized we need to move quickly to help those who have been laid off during the crisis. And it sort of reminds me of, Nancy Pelosi. We've got to pass the bill to find out what's in the bill, because obviously it's always about the opposite of whatever they name these things. And, Mitch McConnell goes on to say, we're fiddling here, fiddling with the emotions of the American people, fiddling with the markets, and fiddling with our healthcare. And he was visibly frustrated, as he said on the Senate floor. And then Chucky Schumer goes on to say, meanwhile, his party's opposed to moving forward because there's a lot of huge bailouts in here. And now they go on to say that because of Rand Paul getting coronavirus, they need to move faster and need to be more urgent. And this proposal costs over $1 trillion, includes hundreds of billions of dollars in loans for small businesses, many of which have been forced to close to fight the spread of the highly contagious virus. It would also make a direct cash payment to the majority of Americans. So this is the, about $3,000 for every family of four. So Democrats are unhappy with the portion of the bill aimed at helping distressed industries with at least $450 billion in loans. The massive fund would be controlled by the Treasury Department and would include bailouts to hotels, casinos, cruise lines, and the oil and gas industries. It also includes virtually no restrictions on how that money would be distributed, allowing properties owned directly by President Donald Trump to receive a bailout, for example, according to Democratic aid. And actually, just yesterday, we did report on the fact that Trump was saying that he wasn't opposed to taking some of this bailout for himself. And I guess I can't blame him if they're going to be giving away money, but the fact that he's partially in control of how the money gets loaned out. And Luke did go on to say that that this money, that we don't know where it's going to be. And I know that even with all the repo money, there's a 2-year hold and all that, so we don't even know where that money is going for 2 years. But another provision in the bill is that Democrats would oppose allowing Mnuchin to delay publicly releasing the names of businesses that receive a bailout, as well as amounts of those loans, for 6 months. So they don't like the fact that this is all going to be hidden for 6 months, which is in addition to the repo that's hidden for 2 years. And and this is actually the most important, I think, sticking point for the Democrats is we're not here to create a slush fund for Donald Trump and his family, or a slush fund for the Treasury Department to be able to hand out money to their friends, said Elizabeth Warren. Obviously, we know her as Pocahontas. We're here to help workers. We're here to help hospitals. And right now, the Republicans' proposal does neither one of those things. And the Democrats have leverage over the final bill because it requires 60 votes for passage in the Senate, and Republicans only have 53 seats in the House. And remember, we've got Rand Paul, who's out right now. And so
Rand Paul and 5 other Republicans who are quarantining themselves. Rand Paul, who was tested positive for the coronavirus.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that there's no transparency. So we won't know for 6 months in this bill, which I think is complete BS. So if you want my money, that's really not even my money. It's like my great grandchildren's down the road. It's their money that you guys want, and we don't even get to know it for 6 months. So it's no surprise that. And I saw something else the other day where I think it was Lindsey Graham who, when he's not trying to help protect the children with his trying to take away encryption, he's also saying that the feds could actually underwrite up to 70% of all America's payroll over the next few months. And a lot of people think that this is just going to be a quick 2 weeks. Hey, shut it down. Boeing is actually shutting things down for 2 weeks up in Washington State. And so, a lot of people think, oh, hey, this is a 2 week thing. We're just going to get through this and then everything's going to be all right. But there's so many, economic bubbles that we had that you guys can see from my Acapulco presentation, that all these bubbles are being ignited at once, and then those bubbles are then igniting other bubbles, and the whole thing is just, this is a big everything bubble, and this is just a gigantic mess, and this is not going to be as easy to clean up. And we could have the markets soaring higher just because the Fed comes in and buys everything. But if the average if 90% of Americans don't have, basically any stock even worth anything, let's say you've got, $50,000 in there. Okay, who cares if the market soars? Okay, great. The market goes up 30%, and now you've got, just a tiny bit more money than you had before. It's not that big of a deal. The average American's living paycheck to paycheck out there, and $3,000. Okay, great. That's going to help, with a tiny bit of the bills. But that's going to be gone before that money's spent before it even gets to them.
And most importantly, Tim, I just wanted to point out here the kind of UBI, universal basic income. This is a kind of perspective that not a lot of people are taking. Maybe instead of giving something, maybe they should stop taking it away, since, of course, they just proved this week that they could just do whatever they want, print as much money as they want, and nothing really matters in this fairy tale land where math doesn't add up, and they just literally make stuff up out of thin air. And also,
it's Common Core math, so it does add up. So
yeah.
they just changed the rules.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you look at like this $3,000 per family, $500 per child UBI, it's absolutely just pennies on the dollar. It's nothing. It's nothing compared to the bigger crimes that are happening on Wall Street, the bigger takeaways that they're able to get. And of course, these larger, bigger industries, I mean, we got to understand, a lot of these industries that are getting rewarded for this bad behavior, they're the ones responsible for being so risky. They're the ones responsible for putting the United States economy in such a vulnerable position where again, it's going to be reeling with the slightest hint of any kind of problem. So to me, this is important perspective that I think people should kind of talk about. I mean, Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, I mean, he's all over the media now saying we need to pass this today. It's nearly, $2 trillion. A lot of secrecy in there, a lot of other bailouts in there. Yes, there's some moves that will help individual people, but at the larger kind of scale of this, this is nothing compared to the kind of actual socialism that's happening on Wall Street. I know people are desperate for anything, but you also have to understand that these are the people robbing you blind at the same time. So if they give you out a little handout, yes, this is a tough position because it's not a time to play politics. A lot of people are suffering, and then let's be honest here. Some people legitimately will be helped by this bill. But I kind of wanted to leave it to the audience members. What do you think? Should this bill be passed? Should this bill not be passed? What are the overlying circumstances in this kind of make-believe world of fake economics where nothing really adds up and nothing really matters anymore? Anything else you want to kind of take away from this bill and this larger takeaway, Tim?
No, just $3,000 is $3,000. So if you give it to me from money that you already stole from me, then okay. But it's just all on a road to hyperinflation. But we might actually see deflation before we get there. That's a subject of a whole nother video. But yeah, this is more of the same, that we throw the chicken feed out to the people. The big banksters and Wall Streeters and hedge fund managers, they get all the profits. And I'm not some socialist. It sounds like a socialist rhetoric, but I work in the stock market. But I just hate all this crony capitalism. I also have put options, so I mean, I sort of hope it still keeps going down. But it's not because I hope it going down, because we need to pop this bubble. It doesn't need to be papered over, so then that way even more people get sucked in, and then more devastation and more loss occurs. Because all that happened in 2008 is we blew a bigger bubble, and now more people getting roped in. It was more highly leveraged. We weren't the ones telling them to do stock buybacks. We weren't the ones who were getting all this stuff levered up. And now, the typical thing is that the rich are getting richer. They get to, a lot of smaller companies will go out of business. The big ones who get the access to money first for nothing will then be able to swoop in, buy up the bonds of those of those companies, and then own those companies. Or maybe it's just the Fed who's now owning those companies. So it's a precarious position. This is, everything that, so many Austrian economists and, Mises people have been warning about for years and years and years and decades. Ron Paul, this is the whole reason he got into Congress. And this is the end game. This is the end game. Make no bones about it. And there's a few ways that this can end, and all of them are not going to be pretty.
Chicken feed, I think, is definitely the right kind of description here, Tim. So totally agree with you on that note. But again, I think a better idea is, how about we just stop stealing from people, and you guys do your little crony capitalism. Let people diversify in many different ways, have different assets. Stand out. I think standing away would have been a better result rather than the people who created this major mess throwing a little bit of chicken scrap towards you.
So,
Yeah.
maybe we can call this, and you guys can let me know how this is a bad dad joke here, but this is crony capitalism.
That's a bad one. They literally, like, imagine you're a chicken. They lit up the chicken coop on fire. They lit up your whole house on fire. Right? You scramble outside. You're burnt. Like you're almost at the Popeyes store, the KFC store, and then the farmer comes up and just like throws you a little bit of food. That's essentially what's happening right now. Hey, some of those people will need some food, but at what cost? Let me know what you guys really think of the description in the comments below, because we would love your feedback. Tim, thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned for more here on The Change, the news channel. What was the tagline that Ernie Hancock wanted us to use? You wanna finish it off, and then we'll end it here?
Change the news, be the news.
I don't know. Maybe. What do you guys think? Let them know.
Let us know. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
At the illegal party that we're at with more than 10 people.